I was folding laundry in the living room when I heard it. The scream. Not the silly tantrum yells kids sometimes make when they don't get candy. Not the playful kind that follows a tickle fight. This scream was sharp, panicked, real. My heart jumped. My 5-year-old son Mason had been playing in the kitchen with his orange juice while my sister Rachel watched him. At least, that's what I thought. I dropped the towel I was folding, my hands already shaking, and ran. What I saw froze me. Mason was curled into a tiny ball on the floor. His little arms were covering his head. His plastic cup was tipped over, juice spreading in a bright orange puddle across the kitchen tiles. And Rachel, my sister, stood over him. A leather belt dangled from her hand like an extension of her anger. Another welt was rising across Mason's small back, red and raw. "Rachel!" I screamed, rushing forward and yanking the belt from her grip. "What the hell are you doing?" She didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look surprised. "He disrespected my kitchen," she snapped. He poured juice all over my clean floors and then laughed. "He's 5, I shouted. "He didn't do it on purpose." Rachel rolled her eyes like I was the problem. "Kids need discipline, Emma, not your gentle parenting garbage. You coddle him like he's a doll. No wonder he's spoiled." I was shaking so hard I could barely breathe. I dropped the belt and knelt down beside Mason. He was crying, but so quietly, like he was afraid to make another sound. "It's okay, baby. Mama's here," I whispered, pulling him into my lap and shielding him with my arms. Rachel scoffed, crossed her arms, and walked out of the kitchen like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just lashed a 5-year-old child with a belt. I held Mason tighter, my mind spinning. I should have packed our things and left that night, but I didn't. And that decision, the choice to stay in that house, would cost me more than I ever imagined. That night, after Mason finally cried himself to sleep, I sat across from my mother at the dining room table. The room was dim, lit only by the weak yellow glow of the chandelier. A glass of wine sat in my mom's hand. She looked calm, relaxed, like it was any normal evening. Meanwhile, I was shaking inside. I laid it all out for her. "Mom," I said, my voice trembling. "Rachel hit Mason with a belt. She left welts on his back. He's 5 years old. I can't. This isn't okay." I expected her face to change. Anger, shock, maybe even guilt. I expected her to stand up for her grandson. Instead, she sighed and took a sip of wine. "Emma, you're always overreacting," she said. Her voice was tired, like I was bothering her with nonsense. "Rachel's not perfect, but she's your sister. She didn't mean it." "She hit him, Mom." I pushed back, my voice rising. "Not a spank, not a slap, with a belt." "Multiple times!" Mom shrugged, completely unbothered. "And that's how we raised you girls. You turned out fine." "No, I didn't," I whispered. My throat was tight, but I forced the words out. I spent years in therapy to feel like a human being again. Her eyes narrowed slightly, annoyed. "Don't make a mountain out of a molehill, Emma. If you call the police, you'll ruin Rachel's career. She just got that teaching job. She's finally stable." My blood went cold. "You care more about her job," I said slowly, "than your grandson's safety." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence said everything. Later that night, when I peeked in on Mason, his little face was still puffy from crying. He clutched his blanket in his fists like it was the only safe thing he had left. Downstairs, I heard Rachel laughing at the TV with Mom, like nothing had happened, like my son's pain meant nothing. And in that moment, I realized the truth. I couldn't count on my family to protect us. I would have to do it myself. The next morning, Rachel acted like nothing had ever happened. She strolled into the kitchen with a big smile and a brand new toy truck in her hands. "Look what Auntie got you, Mason," she said brightly, setting it down in front of him. Mason's little eyes flickered between her and the toy. He didn't smile. He didn't even touch it. He just pressed closer to me, like my hip was the only safe place in the room. Rachel bent down, forced a grin, and patted his head as if the bruises on his back didn't exist. "See, sweetheart, Auntie loves you." My stomach turned. Later that night, after Rachel left, Mason woke up crying. His small body shook as he clutched his blanket. "I'll be good, Mommy," he whispered through sobs. "Please don't let Auntie hurt me again." Something inside me broke. Hearing my baby say those words, it was like fire ripping through my chest. I knew then, no matter how broke I was, no matter how many bridges I had to burn, I had to get us out. The next morning, I didn't wait. I packed everything we owned into 3 trash bags and a laundry basket. Clothes, Mason's toys, the photo album I couldn't leave behind. That was it. When I started loading it into my old Corolla, my mom stood on the porch, arms crossed, her expression hard. "You're making a mistake," she called out. I ignored her. "Don't come crying when you're homeless again," she shouted after me. I didn't even look back, because in that moment, I had nothing left to lose. That night, Mason and I stayed in a rundown roadside motel. The room smelled like bleach and sadness. The neon vacancy sign buzzed and flickered through the thin blinds. We huddled together on the small twin bed, his little body pressed against mine. Every time he shifted, I winced. His bruises still raw, still healing, But even in that miserable room, one truth anchored me. We were free, and freedom, no matter how small, was worth everything. Life at the motel was far from easy. The carpet was stained, the air conditioner rattled all night, and the walls were so thin we could hear the couple next door fighting through the plaster. But it was ours. And it was safe. I had $317 left in my bank account. That was it. Enough for a week at the motel. Maybe 2 if I stretched every dollar. I couldn't think too far ahead. I just focused on the next day. By day, I filled out job applications on my phone. Mason sat beside me, coloring in the motel Bible with broken crayons he found in his backpack. By night, I whispered promises into his hair while he fell asleep. It's going to get better, baby. I promise. Mommy's going to fix this. And slowly, I started building something. The first break came when a 24-hour grocery store offered me overnight shifts. Restocking shelves wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. It meant food money, rent money, survival money. I worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. most nights, leaving Mason with a kind old motel manager who agreed to keep an eye on him while he slept. The guilt ate me alive, but it was the best I could do. A week later, I found remote transcription work. The motel's dusty old lobby computer became my office. For 6 hours each night, I typed up crackly court recordings, my fingers aching while Mason slept in a blanket fort I made out of lobby chairs. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Still, the anger in me never faded. Every time I saw Mason flinch at a sudden noise, every time he woke up whispering, "I'll be good, Mommy," every time I remembered my mom shrugging off the bruises, I burned inside. So I started documenting everything. I took photos of Mason's bruises. I recorded a voice memo of his late-night sobs. I saved every text from my mom where she said, "You're blowing this out of proportion." Rachel was just correcting him. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was justice. And I was going to make sure Rachel and my mother could never hurt him again. 2 weeks into our motel life, I got a knock on the door that froze me in place. I thought it might be my mom. Or worse, Rachel. But when I opened it, a woman stood there holding a clipboard. She introduced herself softly. "Hi, Emma. I'm with Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous tip about possible abuse." My stomach dropped. Panic shot through me. "Were they here to take Mason?" I stammered. "He's my son. Please don't take him. I left to protect him." The woman's eyes softened. She lowered her voice. "We're not here to take him. We're here to help. Would you like to file a formal complaint?" I hesitated, then nodded. I pulled out the folder I'd been building since that night. The photos, the recordings, the texts from my mom. My hands shook as I passed it over. "This isn't just about bruises," I said quietly. "It's about my family covering it up, about Rachel pretending it's discipline, about my mom protecting her instead of my child." The worker flipped through the pages, her expression hardening. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "We'll open an investigation immediately." For the first time in weeks, I felt a tiny flicker of relief, but my family didn't back down. Within days, my mom found a new number to call me from. Her voice dripped with anger. "Emma, you're being dramatic again. Rachel could lose her license to teach. Do you really want to destroy her life over one little spanking?" "No," I snapped. "Over assault on a 5-year-old. Then I blocked her. Rachel tried too. She sent texts like, 'I'm sorry it got out of hand. You know how hard teaching is.' Fake apologies meant to look good on record. I forwarded every message straight to CPS. The investigation had begun. And for the first time, Rachel wasn't the golden child anymore. She was exposed. The court date came faster than I expected. I walked into the courthouse holding Mason's small hand, my stomach twisting. He stayed with a CPS worker in the waiting room while I faced my sister. Rachel sat at the front in a pearl necklace, her hair perfectly curled, her face painted with the innocence she had worn all her life. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue, playing the role of the wounded teacher, the misunderstood sister. Behind her sat my mother, arms crossed, lips pressed thin, shooting daggers at me with her eyes. For a moment, the old fear returned, the fear that I'd fold, that I'd shrink back into silence like I had so many times before. But then I thought of Mason. I thought of his little voice whispering, "Please don't let Auntie hurt me again." And I stood tall. When it was my turn, I laid everything out. The photos of Mason's bruises, the voice memo from the night he cried in his sleep, the text messages where my mother defended Rachel. I spoke clearly, my voice shaking only once, when I described Mason curling into a ball on the kitchen floor while Rachel raised the belt above him. Rachel dabbed her eyes again, but the judge wasn't fooled. Mason's pediatrician testified too. She confirmed the bruises were not accidental, that they matched the shape and force of a belt. Rachel tried to speak for herself. "It was just discipline. I love my nephew. I lost my temper, but it wasn't abuse. People are exaggerating." The judge's face was stern. "Miss Rachel, striking a 5-year-old child with a belt until bruises form is not discipline. It is abuse." My mother gasped loudly, but the ruling was clear. Rachel was issued a restraining order. She was reported to the school board. 2 weeks later, she lost her teaching job. When the gavel fell, I didn't cry. Not even when Rachel turned to me with eyes full of hate. Not even when my mother hissed, "You've ruined this family." I didn't ruin it. I saved it. And I saved my son. Because when I got home that night, Mason smiled. A real smile. The kind I hadn't seen in weeks. 2 years passed after the court hearing. They weren't easy years. They were full of scraped-together rent, late nights working, and mornings when Mason clung to me because he was scared I'd leave. But they were ours. And they were better. Mason started kindergarten at a new school. His teacher believed in gentle encouragement instead of fear. He still flinched whenever he heard the snap of a belt on TV, but he no longer woke up in cold sweats. I found us a tiny apartment. The yard was patchy. The sink leaked, but it was home. Mason painted the mailbox red and wrote his name on it in crooked letters. Every time I opened it, I smiled. Life wasn't perfect, but it was healing. I worked my way up, from overnight shifts to a steady job at the local library. I managed the children's corner, surrounded by books and laughter instead of yelling and bruises. For the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. And then, one afternoon, I saw her. I was reorganizing a shelf when I noticed a reflection in the glass. My mother. She looked older, bitter. Her fake designer shawl clung to her shoulders like it still meant something. I didn't flinch. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I'm on the clock," I said without looking up. "I'm your mother." I turned to face her. "No, you were Rachel's mother. I was just someone you raised to be quiet." Her face hardened, then softened, then twisted again. "Rachel's not doing well," she said. "She lost her job, her house. She drinks now." "You did that." "No," I said calmly. "She did that to herself. I just stopped covering for her." Her eyes narrowed. "We lost our reputation because of you." "No," I corrected. "You lost your mask." She tried one last time. "Mason deserves to know his aunt." "Family is family." I tilted my head. "Do you know what Mason said when I told him Rachel wasn't allowed to see him?" She blinked. "What?" "He said, 'Good. I don't want the belt lady near me.'" Her face twisted with rage, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of another word. I walked away. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't her scared little girl anymore. A week after my mother's visit at the library, a letter showed up in my mailbox, handwritten, no return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Rachel's. I sat at the kitchen table, Mason coloring dinosaurs beside me, and opened it. "Emma," it began, "I forgive you. Please forgive me. My life has been so hard since the incident. Losing my teaching license was too extreme. I've suffered enough. Can't we move past this grudge?" The words blurred with manipulation. It wasn't an apology. It was Rachel's way of painting herself as the victim again. I folded the letter, grabbed a pen, and wrote one sentence back. "Forgiveness without accountability is just manipulation and makeup." I mailed it the next day. No return address. No room for her to answer, and I felt lighter. But life wasn't done surprising me. 2 months later, the same school district that had fired Rachel contacted me. They'd heard about my court testimony and wanted me to speak at their annual parent safety conference. At first, I was nervous. I had never thought of myself as a speaker, but then I thought of Mason and every child like him. So I said yes. My talk was called "When Family is the Danger." I told the story, our story, honestly. Not to shame, but to show that silence protects abusers, and that children deserve more than excuses dressed up as discipline. Afterward, people came up to me, thanking me, sharing their own hidden scars. My name started circulating. A nonprofit approached me with a job offer to run a small grant program for survivors of family abuse. I accepted, and from that came something new, the Mason Project, a small resource center where children could safely and anonymously report family-based abuse, a place built on protection, not excuses. A year later, we had our own space. The city gave us funding for expansion. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Mason wore a tiny suit. I wore a navy blazer. The mayor handed me scissors, and I looked out at the crowd. I thanked those who believed in healing, in justice, in second chances. And then I saw her, my mother, standing alone in the back. No Rachel, no fake smile, just a shadow of who she used to be. I didn't wave. I didn't speak to her, because that day wasn't about her. It was about Mason. It was about every child who had been told, "It's not a big deal," while nursing wounds no one wanted to see. It was about me, finally speaking loud enough to be heard. As the crowd clapped and the cameras flashed, I whispered to myself, "You survived, and that's what matters."